All right, welcome back. Yes, indeed, as you've seen there, Mr. Solabo West joins us this morning. He's a social entrepreneur and a legal practitioner. Also, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, so we see the reports. The president in Russia, we've seen some of the highlights of what's been agreed, but you've also have kept tabs on some of this. But first of all, how does that visit? It is a first ever Russia-Africa summit. And so, as we also heard the president talking about that there, how does that sit with you?
I think it's a great opportunity for African nations to assess more development for their countries. And President Buhari, did well by going there and arranging his team to have done. I think they had several discussions before the summit itself, and that's why they were able to get as much as they announced to have gotten, because nobody really knows how this thing is done out. You get an announcement, tomorrow it could be something else. Nobody really knows.
So when you say, sorry, Land.
Yeah.
So when you say get as much, they say it's a win-win situation. So as much as we're getting, there's also a given. So how do you also look at that?
Yeah, from the perspective of our increasing debt profile, when these announcements come, what frightens everybody really is how much are we going to pay for all of this? Like, right now, we're owing so much to China, we're owing so much to the World Bank, and all these debts usually come as a result of these wonderful announcements that we get to hear. Nothing's going to come for free. We're going to buy attack helicopters, we're going to pay for them, we're going to pay for new rail lines.
What are you expecting them for free?
Well, you want some development assistance. You want some support. Back in the days of the Cold War, when you had the bipolar world, you had some kind of support. If the Americans are coming, you can dance a bit to the Russians. If the Russians are coming, you can dance a bit to the Americans and get some free.
But were they really free? Because when we ask about support and assistance, were they really free? Because if you look back now,
everything seems
there's no free lunch in Freetown.
Well, the Russians have always had this pattern of development support, being that they were fighting against colonialism. They were never really a colonial master. So they've always positioned themselves as people that come to give you something without the strings that your former colonial masters will come with. They had, back in the days of the USSR, and so they were projecting their communism, their cultural revolution. And so there were actually some free things that we got. We got a lot of scholarships. A lot of people went to Russia to study. I think Ajaokuta itself was not a very commercial contract at the time it was done.
We'll come to some of those highlights. But
yeah, I'm just saying some things sometimes come free.
I get you.
Yeah.
Some things, well, we'll come to that too. But when you look at global politics, the way it plays internationally. So this move of ours, remember the last time we tried, there were negotiations between Nigeria and China. You had Secretary of State from the US. He came to the country and said, don't go to China, the loans there. He described them with certain adjectives. So do you think that we actually understand global politics of the chess game that goes on, and then we're positioning ourselves with some of these war powers to our own advantage? Do you see that?
I see that Nigeria is not a young country, so to speak. We talk about ourselves as a young democracy, but we've got smart people. We've done quite well on the international scene from back in the 70s, when people like Joe projected our sovereignty much more, than most other countries. And that's where the whole sobriquet...
To what benefit, internationally?
No, you're talking about whether we are actually doing well, internationally with all of these things that are happening. I say we've got the experience. Whether we can convert that experience to tangible goods. We did very well in Liberia and Sierra Leone. There are quite a lot of Nigerian merchants and businessmen hanging around in Gambia and across the entire West African coast. So
should they be hanging around or calling the shots?
Okay, well, in Nigeria owns about the biggest hotel in Botswana and several other African countries, in Uganda, in Kenya. I used to travel quite a lot in East African countries, and we spend a lot of time with huge Nigerian populations, Nigerian communities doing good business. What just happens to us is that we're just a very big country. We're so many people.
That's what I'm asking.
There's always bad and good.
So what advantage are all these visitations? I think it's something that will give anyone concern. The UK has come personally. Germany has come, India has come to Africa, China has come to Africa. Now, you talked about us, being big.
Yes.
And that's on the one hand. On the other hand, how do we, not have we, how do we convert these to sustainable development?
So now that's local. That's a local effort in the sense that, if you remember, back in the towards the end of Obasanjo's government and the beginning of Yar'Adua's government, there was one talk about the BRICS countries. That's Brazil, India, China, Russia. And Nigeria was touted as one of the countries that was going to make it the BRICS countries. Now, what happens to us most times is that there seems to be some kind of disconnect, in the plan going, so we had a great plan, but how do you ensure that new governments continue on
so how do we ensure
but
so how do we ensure that?
No, it's the civil servants is ensuring that power continues to, be with the civil servants to ensure that they bring these things to bear. There's no other way you can do it.
Where I was heading was
There's
that
no magic.
look, if we're getting involved in all of this, you talked about we have a huge population, top businessmen in different parts of the world and in Africa, but do we have what we call the Nigerian interest, such that if you move out there, if we're going about certain things, there are certain privileges or certain things that are accorded to you as a Nigerian as a result of all of these things? That's what I'm asking. Are we leveraging on that?
Let me put it like this. We were better organized in the 70s and parts of the early 80s. We became a bit, disconnected in the Abacha years, the years before the Abacha years and slightly after. We have begun to reorganize. We for example, we had Nigerians in Diaspora Organization, NIDO, that was done during Obasanjo's time, and we're planning all kinds of diaspora networking and organized relationships. In fact, right now we have a diaspora fund. Now, what I'm just trying to say is that the country is doing a lot at the same time, apart from fighting Boko Haram and fighting kidnappers and all of that. We are trying, so I just think that we're a bit distracted and that we just need to put it together. It's like write a list of all the things, all your various engagements, perhaps open some kind of an office that can ensure that the benefits we should get from China, from Russia, from the UK, from the US, is properly domesticated so that you don't have this P&ID kind of scenario. Because that's the issue. The issue is, like you're saying, how do you put all of these things together? And I even believe that a lot of this is already being done by a combination of Abike Dabiri and Foluke.
A lot of what?
A lot of this organization and making sure, we synthesize and integrate the benefits we are getting from all of these places we are going to. But the problem we are getting to is that this is not being told to the people. The way it's supposed to be done is not being properly communicated. Because
Which is the challenge of communication, and I think it
ties in with what he's saying.
What he's saying, because for instance, Germany has come. Each of these countries, big countries, have come. How do we harmonize?
That's what I'm saying. Let me give you an example. When I was watching your headline, your newspaper thing this morning, and I noticed that there's an announcement Nigeria has moved up 15 points on the,
ease of
doing business. Correct. Now, that's his effort over a period of time that delivered that. As well, the Minister for Transport, Amechi, was also announced to have signed contracts for rolling stock with some Russian companies when he went out there. I was just reading the papers this morning, and I saw that Nasarawa State is also trying to do a rail line from Abuja to Kefi, and they've signed up with another Russian company. I'm just saying that there's quite... My fear really is that the people may not understand the extent to which progress is about to hit us.
And why is that?
Communication. Just communication, and that's one part of it. Then the difficulty, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, of living in Nigeria. It's just difficult. I know how difficult it was for me to get to this studio this morning. It's just, so when you're confronted with that daily difficulty, it has a way of shifting your mind from the good news that you get to hear. It's just difficult. There's traffic everywhere. It's just difficult.
When you talk about communication, I'd just like to look at the effect of this communication in quote. Will it help people probably be more optimistic about the future, or is it meant to help them key into some of this?
Yeah, both of them, because and again, I say this with a lot of, circumspection. A lot of I also heard you guys talk about young people. A lot of young people don't believe in the future of Nigeria anymore. I can, you know, I was chair of a hackathon in Yenagoa recently, and I was talking to a lot of young people. You know, the hackathon is supposed to be a place where people come with new ideas, they talk about it. So we spend 2 nights, and people don't understand. 15 years, what's the SDG? Why do I have to wait for 15 years to take out poverty? It doesn't get it. So there has to be a way.
That's a big challenge.
No, it is. There has to be a way, and it's not just that I prefer to listen to music. No, it's not that. It's still, I want to make progress in life. I want to make money, but I don't understand why I have to wait for 15 years. You know, so there's some kind of an orientation issue with a lot of us.
Those are the people who are supposed to be the future leaders of this country.
Yeah, so we need to communicate seriously the fact that our country is going somewhere, and that the content of that location that we're going to needs to be communicated to the people. And we need to show better example as political leaders, because right now, I can assure you that the examples we're getting from leaders are not very good.
Let's look at some of the highlights of that meeting. This particular one that the president has gone. Let's see if we need more communication or if this will suffice, at least from what we see out there.
But this was well communicated, because Garba Shehu had done a list and pushed it out there, and my friend Prince Tony Prince called me up. When I called him, I said, I was called by China, I was going to call. He said, you have to make sure you talk about these things. So I said, look, I don't want this thing to be politics or anything. You know.
Yeah, we need to say, how do we divert politics from real development issues? Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to, young people.
Governance, you know, after politics, governance must
Okay, if you can see this, I hope you can. Some of the highlights of that particular meeting where the first one spoke about the oil refinery agreement on a JV between Nigeria's NNPC and Russia's Lukoil, which is focused on refinery revitalization. Then they have about gas. We know Gazprom, but now both countries agreed to solidify the venture between the NNPC and Russia's Gazprom for the gas infrastructure project.
The first two really is going to take a bit of time, because they are not players in the industry in Nigeria already. First of all, Lukoil is younger than NNPC, you know? Lukoil was founded in 1992. We've got more experience doing oil business in Nigeria than companies like Lukoil. They are big because it's a product of a privatization exercise that happened in Russia, and they gave them good support, and they were able to project their business plans, and so they bought stuff in America and several other countries. But we've got Nigeria.
Well, you can't blame Russia. They will push what they think will benefit them.
No, so it comes back to what we're talking about. Yeah. What you said about what are we doing with all of this, you know, visits, and, you know, why are we not having Nigerian businesses being created and pushed outwards? Obasanjo tried it. People fought against it. He tried to create. That's where Transcorp came from. Somehow he didn't. Something is just wrong with.
I think that's probably a challenge of the communication you talked about the other time.
Yeah, for people to believe that is, you know, point the direction of purpose and all of that.
No, you mentioned Transcorp. Is it communication or, you know, policy implementation?
You don't get it. Look, let me give an example. Go back to Lukoil. Lukoil, first of all, they have about the most terrible environmental record, you know, in the industry. I'm an oil man as well, and I understand what's happening. Gazprom had already come to Nigeria during Yar'Adua's government, and they had tried to partner with the NNPC. In fact, it created an uproar. I know you spoke about it sometime, maybe you've forgotten. Some niggers, that was the name of the company that was partnered, a JV that was created between Nigeria and Gazprom. And it created an uproar, as in, you know, the same, you know, sobriquet, niggers, like, you know, Russians are coming here to call us niggers. And so that's why the company never took off, because the name was just wrong.
Oh, Nigeria gas.
Yeah, so Gazprom. So it was niggers. And so it was an international uproar. And so Gazprom never got around to, it's a huge company, by the way. It's actually much bigger than Lukoil and has much better records. And they are reputed, you know, they've got huge pipelines across the Eastern Bloc countries, because they were running the entire oil and gas system in the old USSR. So when the countries broke up, the Baltic states broke up, Gazprom automatically became a multinational with huge, deep pockets. So Gazprom is a good partner to have. I don't know much about, I don't think Lukoil, because refining, for example, except you're going to do what Dangote is doing, start a greenfield refinery, like start afresh. If you're going to want to maintain, the easiest thing to do is to go back to the guys who built it for you. You know, like what we're trying to do with Ajaokuta. We're going back to Russia to say, come back and help us out. So if all our refineries, none were Russian built. So if Lukoil is going to come, except they're going to come and say, okay, we're going to go and build a refinery in Bauchi, you know, or Gongola Basin where they found oil or something. But
Well, talking about the gas element of that conversation, how does that tie in with Nigeria's LNG company that started, you know, also not too long ago?
the problem with gas in our country is not a lack of investment or a lack of investor. The problem we have with all of that issue is the local communities and
Not the policies.
that's what I'm saying, and the framework that has made sure that people continue to suffer and complain. Once the
It's
you know,
deliberately put that way.
you don't need to go to tell a company to come and invest in your oil and gas sector. It's a very lucrative sector. So people come ordinarily to invest in it. But once your policy is not right, it's not organized, it's not in a good way, people are saying prevarications, changes, stops, you know, the whim of a man, you know.
Is that why some international platform describe the market as a fickle market? Policies can change and it
That's
can cripple
the
businesses.
problem. That's the basic problem. We've been struggling. If the PIB, for example, it's difficult for a man to put his, you know, the dollar is shy. You know, money is always shy. If you put the money, if you put the policy right and people can see stability, you don't need to go to Russia to get Gazprom and Lukoil. They will come here by themselves to struggle to get a piece of the pie. The growth of Lukoil as a company is because they went and bought part of ConocoPhillips in the US, for example. They went and bought part of another Texas firm. They went to Saudi Arabia because the environment is good. Maybe if we have moved 15 places.
And speaking about that, you know, if all of those technologies come, because in the US, they are applying this shield technology, UK, so several countries are applying that.
Yeah.
So shouldn't we have had some sort of conversation, or maybe a will, about them deploying the shield technology in this country? We don't need
we
that
don't
yet.
need it. We don't need shale. Our oil is in a place where it's easy to get. Shale is doing something more than the very basic technology to extract oil from the ground. Shale means, you know, putting chemicals, pumping things in there, you know, and destroying the environment. So you don't need shale. We have, our oil is sweet. It's easy. Just drill a hole in the ground and it will come out.
So just to be clear, when you say
Same with our gas.
right, when you say the
Sweet
problem has
country.
been with stability, so are you thinking we might run into the same challenges we've always had if we don't sort that issue of stability?
We will. We definitely will. Let me put it like this. If you go to Russia, you talk 13 things, and your people are not carried along. Your people being your ministries, not even the
What about
minister.
the business community?
The same thing. Do you get, if the business community is not carried along, the government agencies that are regulating these industries are not carried along. I'm not saying that's what has happened now, because I don't know what has happened. But I know that the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce in Abuja, my senior brother, Adetokunbo Kayode, recently we've been having all kinds of Russian discussions. There's the Russian-Nigeria Chamber of Business Council and all kinds of things. Russia has actually been making efforts to come to Nigeria. So it's not just the president's visit. So say in March, May, there has been meetings with Russian businessmen and Nigerian businessmen, you know, on the sidelines, you know, before. For me, this was just a big, I don't want to call it jamboree, but it's just an opportunity for Russia to show the world that they are now like a big country, because Russia sat down
That's the international
and invited
politics.
the whole African leaders to come sit with them.
After decades of being absent during the USSR days. But, you know, in spite of all of this that is going on too, because I'm just looking, when we seek for FDIs, do you think, or do you see us, do we do that enough, ensuring that, look, there are laws and rules in this country that you have to stick by, employing local content, the local population, the expertise, those hands,
I think
putting back into the country?
the laws are good. We've got a wonderful...
Do we ensure that they comply with those?
No,
Because we have
we do.
complaints of workers
We
in
do.
this country about foreign companies who don't even comply with 50% of the laws, or even a lot of the laws.
Okay, let's say, it depends on how you look at your compliance matrix. If we're doing 70%, 80% compliance, that's not really...
Are we even doing 70%?
Well, I know as a fact that in the oil industry, you know, because I have to apply for expatriate quota for so many companies.
Not just oil industry, anyway.
No, for example, so in the oil industry, it's a bit organized. You know, you've got the local content office, NCADMB. They're very organized people. You've got, so you can't bring in equipment without temporary importation permits. The oil industry is easy to organize because there are fewer people. But I guess the ones you're complaining about are these small Chinese manufacturers and Filipinos that are hanging around.
They're not small because these companies,
I know, that's where they take...
And the capital flight that happens in the country. But look at Jakarta.
Sorry, Chamberlain, before we go on to this oil thing, you talked about the communities, business community, but I want to talk about another community entirely.
Oh, the host community.
The host communities of this project.
Big issue.
Big issue.
Yes.
So how do we address that in all of this?
Look, something is happening.
Because already the JVs that we have, they're having issues.
Something is happening. Something is happening. And it's going to revolutionize the way we think about host communities and companies. This thing I'm talking about is what a company called Belema Oil is doing, where the host communities are insisting that they want a particular company to drill oil in their place. Now, what that means is that the communities are now stronger and in a better position to negotiate for the best value for themselves. And that's the only way they can get anything. Nigeria is a federation. And constantly...
Are they leveraging on the local content framework?
Yes, they are. So for example, the community which Belema Oil works in insisted that they wanted Belema Oil to work in their community. So for 2 years, the federal government and Shell and the other partners were arguing and said, no, you can't dictate who should work in your community. Eventually, the community prevailed because they stopped everybody from working. So what I'm thinking is that going forward, more communities are going to insist on, the Ogoni's insisted on it since 1995. They shut down OML 11 and it's still not been produced till today. So I'm saying that things are going to change. Thank God there's oil in the north right now. And so the whole north-south issues that usually destroy all our thinking
Even though
in Nigeria,
that is not fully...
No, I'm just saying whatever it is. Like I said, from announcement to reality, sometimes things change.
If it's in commercial quantity, what is next? But a different conversation entirely. Look at the Ajaokuta component. The president did tell Russia, yes, we would like you to come back, complete and launch Ajaokuta. I understand the president, President Putin, accepted that. So that in itself, the way it comes across now, on paper, looks good.
It looks good, but there's tons of litigation. It's not just Ajaokuta. We've got Alscon, the aluminium smelter company. Those are those are the two biggest Russian investments in Nigeria.
What about the Delta one too?
Delta Steel. Delta Steel. It's a mass of litigation. But if you notice in the report, even the president said they should bring the legal report to him for him to look at it again. But the truth is that the best scenario for us is for the people who helped us build this thing,
which is Russia,
to come back. Yes, somehow the two companies, Rusell and the Technip, the company that built Ajaokuta, Rusell was going to build Alscon. When Obasanjo was doing the privatization exercises, they didn't
bring them in.
Yeah, no, they didn't put good prices. They came for the privatization exercise to take over these plans, but they brought figures that were not...
Don't forget the history behind this too, because when Nigeria wanted to build it, they went to different companies, different countries. They didn't want Nigeria
to have it.
To have it.
Yes.
So when Russia then came in, and then along the
yes.
way, of course, there'll be frustrations and challenges, spanners in the works, and
because
then
it was the bipolar world at that time. So for me, I actually assumed that a lot of things transited from that time to when Obasanjo came and tried to do the privatization. And so the Americans still came in again and tried to take over these assets. But we are an independent country right now. And so we should take decisions that should move us forward. And back to what my friend was saying, we owe nobody any apologies. We want development. It's difficult for anybody to transfer technology to you. You must take it by any means possible.
But the challenge then...
Okay. No, the challenge now, let's go to break.
Right.
So when we return, we'll continue from this perspective.
Wonderful.
Join us again.
Wonderful.
All right, welcome back. It's our concluding moment with Mr. West. Mr. West? Oh, okay. We're talking about policies from the West. So it just occurred to me. But this is we're talking about, you're making the points about the importance of Ajaokuta, but the president also spoke about the ones who spoke about Alscon in Ikorabasi, how they wanted to ensure that they sort out all of those entanglements so that it goes in line almost simultaneously with
and I think it's the
Ajaokuta.
best. Yeah, I think it's the best. The best people to revive an industry is the people that helped you set it up. But like we're just talking, the biggest problem usually is let's not get too many world powers, on the Nigerian plate and eventually destroy all the benefits we're planning to get. Because, for example, I know it's an American company that won the bid, Global Steel, I think, for Alscon, and they haven't paid. That's what the whole litigation is about. Now, if we're not careful to find some middle road for everybody, then the original company, Rusell, may never be able, whether we reach an agreement with Russia, or discussed in Sochi, we may never be able to implement it if we don't properly try and find a middle road for people to...
Depends on how we play.
No, it still falls back on us to ensure that whatever litigation that is lingering in Ajaokuta is resolved favorably or in a mutually acceptable way. Same for Alscon as well. Whatever issues we have there be resolved amicably, because we don't have a good history of litigation and handling arbitrations, and I don't know why. I really don't know why, because we've got a lot of lawyers.
Sorry, some people say the more the merrier. In fact, experts will say that when you have the more, you can get competitive deals, such that you say, well, this is what this country is offering, then you can offer more.
Not in this case, because you have a gestation period. It takes a lot of time to deploy technology and deploy infrastructure. So if you're going to spend 2 years searching for a good deal among 6 people or 4 countries, that President Buhari's government would have finished. Another person would have come. And
which
who knows if
raises
he wants to
question, the concern
that
I was talking about, the challenge before we took the challenge of the break at the time, is that, look, every successive government seems to have its own agenda. As at the government of Shehu Shagari in 1984, this Ajaokuta steel rolling mill
they built it.
was about 98% complete. It's just a little fraction to end, and then the whole thing seemed to have gone south up until this moment. Now, what's the assurance we have that by 2023 or beyond 2023, this thing will continue?
Well, let's say Mr. President has a good heart, and with the efforts he has put in Sochi, we have no choice but to believe that...
you have believed before.
Yeah, you know how it is. The pains of pregnancy doesn't make a woman, the pains of delivery doesn't make a woman not get pregnant the second time. We have gone through pains, we have gone through difficulties, and if we can see...
Was there a delivery? I mean, you use the delivery and pregnancy.
Oh, yes, there have been deliveries already in 1 or 2 things, painful deliveries.
You made reference to civil servants the other time.
No, that's what I'm saying. We must have, you see, governments must change. Political leaders must change. The only people that don't change are the civil servants, and the systems, the MDAs that were established. There has to be some way that we can domesticate or internalize all of this. For example, like I was telling you, it's difficult to remove the intelligence agencies from technology acquisition. I don't know if we're doing it that way. I think we are, from what I understand, I have friends in the intelligence network as well. But we have to just strengthen them, because we have this, everybody wants to be the last man that takes a decision. Yeah. Now, if there's a way, in South Africa, they used to do, they call it cooperative development. So if the local government is doing something, the state government is doing the same thing, the federal government is doing the same thing, there's an office that everything goes to ensure that we don't waste our budgets at different levels.
I hope they tell us why the CCTV in Abuja is not working.
That's so I'm just saying that we would have to ensure that the civil servants...
But how do we do that? How do we institutionalize development, not individualize?
Of course. There's no magic wand. We just have to give honor to whom it is due, give power to whom, reside the power where it should be resided in the first place.
Then look at this part. I know they talk about the railway, the nuclear energy, security. So we're renewing the military technical agreements within, they want to do that within the shortest possible time.
Russia,
of course, there'll be arms.
Russia has been our major supporter for arms. They gave the federal government most of the arms they used to fight the Civil War. That's where the Kalashnikov...
But that was then. There was a lull.
No. The Kalashnikov rifles that you hear about, it's a very prolific rifle because it can be used in any terrain. I have a background in the military as well, so I understand weapons. The T-38 tanks, the tanks that, very prolific. Those are what was used in Nigeria. The MiG fighter jets and the bombers. Those are all Russian. We have vessels, ships, naval ships. Russia has always been our major arms supplier. Because for one strange reason, our colonial masters did not support us as much as they should have.
But we should have known better.
And so we're just renewing the same. We're getting more Russian armored personnel carriers. In fact, that's what we have. That's what we're using against Boko Haram in the northeast already. We got a lot of them, but not from Russia now. We got them from Ukraine and the other.
I hear we're also building in the country too.
Oh yes.
What's wrong with Daikon?
Daikon is doing very well. Frankly speaking, so they are. They are but their mandate is not a very big mandate. You measure somebody's
all these decades.
No, we're doing small arms in Daikon. We're doing ammunitions. That's what they told them to do. Maybe if they told them to do bigger things and give them money to do bigger things.
But why do you think that they've not been told to do big things? Why do we need to...
Now they're partnering with Innocent. I'm aware of that. The Army is partnering with Innocent and they're building bigger things. Maybe not in Daikon, somewhere else, but effort is being... we used to have Nigeria is just one country. We had a huge company called STEYR. I don't know if you know, there's a company called STEYR, S-T-E-Y-R. STEYR is one of the biggest military and articulated vehicle manufacturers. We brought STEYR to Nigeria, opened a huge factory for them in Bauchi in the 70s. Somehow, STEYR went away, just like Volks went away too. So the idea was Daikon was to do small things. The Army was to partner with STEYR to do bigger things. Somehow, STEYR has gone. So we're going to have to put it together again. So.
When we talk about, having deals security-wise, don't forget we're trying to purchase Tucano jets from the United States.
No, that was a long time ago.
Exactly. And let's not also forget...
Let's order
we're going to get them in a few years.
You said we're trying to.
Yeah.
I'm saying it was a long time ago.
But they've not been delivered.
Because those things take a bit of time.
But this is where I'm going. Now, we understand that there's this sort of issue between the United States, Russia, there's Syria, Turkey, most of which we have relations with.
Yes.
So where does that leave us? I mean...
No, we need some equipment. That's why some guys took a bag of cash to South Africa. Unfortunately, they were arrested at the airport during President Jonathan's time to try and get, just off the shelf. Because international politics is always make it difficult for you to negotiate through all of these things, and so you waste a lot of time. But I'm aware that we have improved capacity, air capacity in the Northeast now as a result of all of these engagements. Maybe the exact equipment you're talking about may not be on ground, but there are other ones that are not Super Tucanos, but can deliver the same payload, the same...
No, we didn't request for the Tu-160. We went to South Africa instead.
I don't know about... You see, so these things, when you talk about the specifications, and those are national security issues, you should be careful so that the Boko Haram doesn't go and buy the same one or the one that will kill it.
Where would they get to buy a Tu-160? They want to... we wish them luck if they can't succeed.
Half the world.
But let's conclude with this. Sorry to jump in with this. The private sector. Because there are several persons in the manufacturing and the private sector who have this impression that it does come across to them as though the government is competing with them in business. And we know that for several things to thrive, the capacity of the private sector, they're the largest employers. So that capacity, we need to grow that capacity.
I agree.
So
I agree.
Where do they fit in the scheme of things moving forward?
Government is too powerful in Nigeria. That's usually the problem. And so they have...
Is that a good or bad thing?
It's bad. It's a bad thing. But it's the nature of... I think it's not a decision that was made. It's the nature of the people in the country to delegate upwards. So everybody looks up to the president to decide stuff that you could have done, on a person-to-person basis, on a company-to-company basis, on an agency-to-company basis.
Which is historical.
That's what I'm saying. So it's just how we are. So in places where private sector should... Because all these companies that are going to come to Nigeria from Russia are not Russian government companies. They are all going to be Russian businessmen that are going to come and do business here. In fact, some of them are already here. So we have to ensure that the people that will meet them should not be Nigerian government. It should be Nigerian business community and the Russian business. That's what it should be.
Well, it's a government-to-government relation.
No, in some of them. For example, in Nigeria, we're trying to do a government-to-government. But in the oil sector, for example, it's going to be NNPC.
No, but should we be doing government-to-government? At what stage should we terminate government-to-government?
No, government-to-government should be at policy level or at aid and intervention. That's why you do government-to-government. So that you, like that one you're saying you must pay for. There are times government-to-government you don't pay because it's a government-to-government relation. But once it gets commercial, then you have to get a commercial unit to relate with the commercial unit of the other country so that you can domesticate whatever decisions government-to-government have taken to move forward. For the rolling stock, for example, rolling stock being the coaches, the government has already signed a contract with a Russian business to provide those kind of things for us, because that's the biggest problem the rail systems will have. But my fear is that we're having Chinese men build, the rail lines. We're having Chinese men supply some of the rail. They were having Russians.
So it's a salad of sorts, jollof.
No, but I guess it's the same technology. And so if you buy a car from Mazda or a car from Nissan, it's all going to drive on Nigerian roads. Eh?
Well, that's why they need to also ensure that the private sector benefits the leverage and then will draw the lines properly to ensure people don't cross where they should
the government has to get the best benefit, frankly speaking, to get the best benefit of all this that we're saying. So it's good we're improving our doing business rating. We have to ensure that, the private sector is fully involved, and not from a master-servant, standpoint, but from a peer-to-peer standpoint. That's what I think.
Okay, so that's also a fine place to anchor. We've been speaking with Mr. Solabo West, who is a social entrepreneur and a legal practitioner, also a solicitor of England and Wales. Thank you for coming on this morning.
How did you squeeze that in?
Well, you also do know that speaking about this policies, politics determines a lot, whether we get it right or wrong. If we don't get that process right, or the electioneering process right, we just may be going around in circles or cycles, as they say. But now let's talk about some of those. Markwe, go ahead.